And so an effect of EMF exposure, RF exposure on DNA is the fundamental first step in development of tumors. Gene expression, these things could be tied together. Altered enzyme activity could be related to alterations in gene expression. There are immune system perturbations, endocrine disruption. My work has focused on the production of the hormone known as melatonin, altered blood-brain barrier, changes in autonomic nerve function, alterations in sleep and circadian rhythms, various neurological symptoms. These things are cataloged in detail in the Bioinitiative report. So I urge you, if you're interested in finding out more about the literature on this, you can take a look at that document. Now, what about the epidemiology of the effects of RF exposure? And in particular, I'd like to focus on radio and TV transmission, since I'm kind of focusing my talk here on Lookout Mountain. So these epidemiologic studies of RF exposure on outcomes in human populations have typically focused on cancer, and the focus has generally been in 3 different types of exposure scenarios. Worker populations where exposure was characterized using either their job description, or slightly more sophisticated would be a job exposure matrix where the predicted exposure of each job is assigned to each worker according to the amount of time they spent in that job. Populations living near radio and TV transmitters where they look at the rate of disease in communities as you move further away from the transmitter. So if there was an effect of a transmitter on cancer outcome, for example, you would expect there to be high cancer rates really close to the towers. And as you move further away, you would expect the cancer rates to get lower and lower until you get to a point where they would reach background levels. And so there have been quite a few studies using this type of approach where they kind of draw a bullseye around a TV or radio transmission tower or a cluster of these, and then look at rates as you move further away. And the results have been mixed in many cases. Then there's the mobile phone use and whether that's associated with brain cancer. There's a huge literature on this now, and everybody is sort of eagerly anticipating the release of the Interphone results, designed to be a definitive look at whether or not cell phone use is associated with brain cancer. We've already had some hints with some of the Interphone participating countries. They've already seen increased risks. Other studies have shown no risks. This is a very controversial field. And aside from the controversy, the study of cell phone use in brain cancer presents some very pithy epidemiologic problems methodologically. Can you get good recall from asking people how often they use their phone? There's differences in participation rates among controls, and if they use phones at different rates, then these non-participants can be very pivotal in the outcome, in determining what the results are. If you have a tumor on your acoustic nerve, it can affect your hearing, and you may want to switch sides and use the phone on the other side that you normally use it on. These things all can potentially affect the results of these studies, and they're very difficult to ascertain going back into upwards of a decade or more to try and reconstruct somebody's exposure. So these are very difficult issues, and people are grappling with this. The epidemiologists are rightfully grappling with the interpretation of some of these results. So, but of these 3 different types of studies that have been done on RF and health outcomes, primarily cancer, 3 things kind of emerge as general properties of the methods. Typically, RF exposures are not measured themselves. There's some type of surrogate exposure that's used. Elevated risks are reported by some and not by others, and so there's mixed results, creates a lot of confusion in terms of messaging to the public. And then the biological mechanisms have not really been determined. I gave you that list of potential mechanisms. There's a real inconsistency. And so until we really understand what that interaction is between electromagnetic fields and biological mechanisms, and find something that's reproducible and effective that anybody can do in a lab environment and get the same result, until we really understand what dose is, it's going to create that a little bit more controversy. So there's that. So the number has gone up considerably since the time we did the study. There's about 9 megawatts of effective radiated power, or at least there was at the time that we did this study. It's probably also gone up. This is a little bit dated information. At the time we also studied this population, there were about 15 primary transmitters. So if you look, there's a house in the foreground, and then out on the top of this knoll, you can see several towers. And so there's some of these homes are probably directly in the main beam of the RF transmissions. And so this is fairly unusual. Lots of communities, just about every major city has a group of transmitters, and most of the time you have the transmitters up on a mountain and then people living down below. This is a very unique situation in which the residential community is kind of interspersed and at the same elevation as a lot of the transmitters. Measurements have been made. In some cases, the maximum permissible exposure limit has been exceeded. That's 200 microwatts per centimeter squared. These are areas that are very close to the tower, not in anybody's home that I am aware of. There are about 350 homes that are within a mile of these transmitters. And so Lookout Mountain has been characterized as perhaps the most highly exposed residential community to RF in the United States. So this is an important area for study because of the elevated exposures. And so one of the things that happened based on some petitions that the community had made was a evaluation of cancer rates in the community. The state health department, there's a cancer registry that is maintained by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. The community asked the health department to look to see whether or not cancers are elevated in this community. So what they did is just taking information out of the cancer registry for this census tract, which includes the towers as well as a large area surrounding Lookout Mountain. This is Lookout Mountain here. This is, for those of you who are local residents, you recognize Lookout Mountain Road, and most of the community lives here. There's another smaller community in this area. This is Golden. And so what they did is they just take the information out of the cancer registry, identify how many cancer cases there are. This is the observed number of cancers. And then they apply cancer rates to the population size within the census tract to calculate how many expected cancers how many cancers you would expect to see if the rate of tumor incidence here in the census tract was the same as the whole area of Denver. Actually, they didn't use all of Denver. They used some specific communities in Denver that had the same socioeconomic status as Lookout Mountain. And that way they were able to match for SES. SES is a known predictor of cancer, of some types of cancer, and so they also match by age. And so in this way, they get the expected number of cases. You take the observed number of cases divided by the expected number of cases. If that number is greater than 1, then you have an increased brain cancer, or cancer risk. I keep saying brain cancer. So this is what the health department did. They had an initial study and then a follow-up in 2004. And in general, throughout the whole census tract, there was no increase in cancer. They looked at all cancers, and they looked at specific cancers that had been linked with RF exposures previously. There was no increase in leukemia, no increase in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, no increase in breast cancer, but there was an elevation in brain cancer.